webinar is being inaugurated by our respected principal, Dr. T. Vijayan, sir. A warm welcome to you, sir, to this webinar. Today, our resource person is Dr. M. Usman, sir. A renowned academician and educational administrator. And I welcome you, sir, to this webinar. The vote of thanks is going to be proposed by Vijay Kumar, our Senate member and executive member of IQAC. I extend a warm welcome to Vijay Kumar, sir, to this webinar. Today, students from different parts of the Kerala state, there are students, teachers, and general public joined to this webinar, and I extend a warm welcome to all of them. Moreover, we have teachers from our mentee institutions and teachers from our institutions, from other institutions also. I welcome all the students, teachers, and the general public once again to this webinar. Now, I would like to introduce our resource person, Dr. M. Usman, sir. He is a renowned academician and educational administrator and has 35 years of experience in teaching and research. He has been the founder director of PM Institute of Civil Services Examination, Farouk College, Calicut, and the founder principal of Amal College, Nilambur. He has published a number of books and nearly 300 articles. He has served as the member of the Senate Academic Council, Inter-University Center, Chairman, Board of Studies, etc. He has been the president of the Kerala Principals Council. After completing the tenure, he served as the general secretary also. He is currently working as the principal of MIC Arts and Science College, Botanica. He is also a secretary of the Indian Colleges Forum, New Delhi. He is a recipient of 2 state level and 2 national level awards for the contributions in higher education. Once again, I welcome you, sir, to this webinar. The webinar is being chaired by Dr. A. Muralidharan, sir. Sir, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. K.V. Murali, for your nice words of welcome and introducing our distinguished faculty, Dr. Usman. So next is the presidential address. Distinguished speaker of this fine morning, Dr. M. Usman, principal of the college, Dr. T. Vijayan, IQAC coordinator, Dr. K.V. Murali, participants on board, ladies and gentlemen. It's a matter of pride and honor for me to address you on the occasion of this webinar on National Education Policy 2020 that was rolled out by the Union Cabinet on July 31st, 2020. Since then, tremendous discussions and deliberations in the form of webinar are taking place across the length and breadth of this country. Majority are supporting the policy, but some are against it, stating that there are 3 C's in the policy, such as centralization, commercialization, communalization, etc. So as you all know, this is a well-drafted, beautifully worded policy under the leadership of Dr. Kasturirangan. As you all know, the policy is only a vision. It's only an intent. It's only an aspirational document, and it is not a legal document. So, lot of discussions and deliberations are to be taken place on the national education policy, even at the grassroots level, so as to implement the policy in its good spirit with due legislative orders. It is in this backdrop, IQAC of Nehru Arts and Science College is organizing this webinar as a part of their Paramarsh scheme for the benefit of teachers of the mentee institutions of the college in particular. It seems this is the first seminar on the topic of this policy, national education policy, under Kannur University. Personally, I feel that this policy is going to empower our students in general, empower our academic programs, strengthen our colleges and universities, and last but not least, our regulatory bodies. Despite there are ambiguity here and there in the policy. Having said this, I mean, there are structural as well as procedural changes that are going to take place in higher education in the days to come, in another 20 years. Multidisciplinarity is going to be the password of higher education. Presently, our higher education system is highly fragmented. So our higher educational institutions are going to be consolidated into three, such as research intensive universities, teaching intensive universities, and autonomous colleges as stated the policy. Our affiliation system is going to be phased out in another 15 years, as no countries in the world except India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh are having affiliation system even now. Nehru multidisciplinary education and research universities will be set up at par with IITs and IIMs. All higher education institutions will be having a student strength of 3,000 plus, with an aim of doubling the GER to 50%. Our UG programs are going to be of 4 years duration, with an option of multiple entries and exits. That was copied from West, where higher education is not sponsored by parents. Our PG program will be of 1 year duration, and MPhil program will be taken away as it serves no purpose to education. Integration of vocational education to school and higher education curriculum is a good move to emphasize the dignity of labor among students. Our students are going to be highly benefited from this national education policy in many ways. Instead of appearing for various entrance tests for admission to various higher education institutions, National Testing Agency conducts one test every year that is applicable to all higher education institutions, so that students can save a lot of money with respect to that. ABC, Academic Bank of Credit, will be established that will digitally store the academic credit earned by the students from various modes of learning. Silos of disciplines will be vanished, so that students have no flexibility to choose. Students have more flexibility to choose subjects of their own interest and trajectories. But junior teachers may raise their eyebrows when there is a likelihood of introducing tenure tracking system as seen in the West. Presently, we have 16 to 70 regulatory bodies like UGC, AICTE, etc., for laying down the norms and standards of higher education institutions in India. This is going to be completely revamped with the formation of an umbrella body called Higher Education Commission of India, under which there will be 4 subsidiary bodies for looking after regulation, accreditation, funding, and academic standards. There is a possibility of introducing binary academic system, either yes or no, by 2040, which I hope Dr. Usman sir will explain. I don't want to prolong at this juncture. What we want is the right mindset to implement the policy in letter and spirit. In order to teach our students of 21st century, we should not have a mindset of 19th century and syllabus of 20th century. With this note, I conclude my presidential address. Thank you one and all for your patient listening. Next, I move on to inauguration. May I request Dr. T. Vijayan, Principal of Nehru Arts and Science College, to formally inaugurate this webinar. Over to Dr. T. Vijayan. Please, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good morning to all. Respected President of the program, Dr. A. Muralidharan, former Principal of our college, and NAC Accreditation Ambassador, Resource Person, Dr. Usman Sir, Secretary, Indian College Forum, IQAC Coordinator, Dr. K.V. Murali, Dr. Sri Vijay Kumar, Department of Commerce, faculty members of our college, faculty members from other institutions, and my dear students. As you are aware, IQAC of our college is organizing a webinar program for the topic National Education Policy 2020 and Issues on Accreditation. We know that all in the current coronavirus situations, all academic institutions are organizing webinar instead of our seminar or conference, etc., due to the current COVID crisis. And as we know, education is an integral part of human society, and it is the process of imparting knowledge, values, and skills. Actually, education policy determines the changes required to improve the education in the country. The National Education Policy is introduced by the Government of India for promoting education amongst the people of the country. Actually, the 2020 education policy was launched on 29th July 2020 with the objective of providing quality-based education with a value system and creative learning environment at the primary education. The biggest changes that we have noted in the policy is that the 10+2 pattern or structure has been replaced by 5+3+3+4 structure. Today, a webinar program is organizing here, and I take this opportunity to appreciate the IQAC team, especially Dr. K.V. Murali, Dr. A. Muralidharan, and the team for organizing such webinar in our institution. With these few words, I formally inaugurate the webinar program. I wish all success for the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vijayan, Principal of Nehru Arts and Science College, for your nice words and introducing this webinar. Next is addressed by the resource person. The floor is handed over to the resource person, Dr. M. Usman. Please, sir.
Hello, good morning, one and all. My esteemed friend and the Accreditation Ambassador of Nehru Arts and Science College, Kanhangad, and former Principal, Dr. A. Muralidharan, the present Principal, Dr. T. Vijayan, the IQAC Coordinator, Dr. K.V. Murali, the Senate Member from Nehru Arts and Science College, Dr. Vijay Kumar, distinguished participants, principals, the delegates from the 7 mentee colleges of Nehru Arts and Science College, and ladies and gentlemen. I am extremely happy to be a part of this national program, this great event, organized in the extreme northern part of Kerala on New Education Policy 2020. I thank the organizers, especially my friend Dr. Muralidharan, for inviting me to this program. Actually, I love to be a part of this program, not only because of his invitation. Nehru Arts and Science College, Kanhangad, is a dream destination for the students of North Malabar. I know that. I have association with some of the people there already. Your former principal and the former Vice Chancellor of Kannur University, Dr. Kader Mangad, he is one of my esteemed friends, and we were together in the Principals Council of Kerala when I was the General Secretary. He was a member of the Executive Committee. Similarly, Dr. Muralidharan, he was also with me supporting and coordinating the activities of Principals Council in Northern Kerala. I just cherish the memories of all those good old days. Similarly, I had a friend from Nehru Arts and Science College, Professor Professor Ravindran of Economics Department. He is my esteemed friend. He is retired from service already. He was also with me. We were together in many programs at the national level, actually. So I am very happy to be a part of this program. And of course, there are some distinguished delegates also on board today. I want to acknowledge them also. Professor E.P. Ichikoya, former principal of our college autonomous and a NAC peer team member, and who himself is a great mentor for the institutions. Similarly, Reverend Sister Dr. Teresa, former principal of St. Teresa's College, Ernakulam. She was also my colleague in the Principal's Council. Now she is now not another state, working as a head of the great educational organization. Similarly, my esteemed friend and author, great author, Dr. C.P. James from El Turuttu College, the famous professor of economics, is also on board. And several such great personalities are there in this webinar. Actually, my task has been very much lightened by the welcome address, especially the presidential remarks of Muralidharan sir and the inaugural address of the principal regarding the new education policy. Now, of course, I would like to speak on NEP and with a special focus on accreditation issues, because this program is being organized under the Paramarsh scheme, and Nehru Arts and Science College, Kanhangad is a leading mentor institution of Kerala, one of the institutions which started actually an early work with respect to the Paramarsh scheme in that way. So my task has been very much lightened by this. Those who have heard my presentation or watched my presentation earlier, the first two sections of my presentation may be a repetition for them. Please bear with me. I would like to plan my entire presentation into 5 sections. The first part, I will have an introductory remark on the NEP. Secondly, then I will just mention the challenges and the problems of higher education, just a passing reference as given in the policy. Thirdly, the resolution of these challenges and policy. Then I will also discuss in the next section on NEP and accreditation. That is our basic theme. Then we will also think of the challenges of proposed accreditation regime for the colleges and universities, etc. And we will have a summing up of all these things in that way. Now I will now go to my presentation, the PowerPoint presentation. Can you see this now? Okay. Okay, it will come.
No, sir.
It will come. No, sir. It will come.
Okay. We can see the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, now it is ready. Okay. So now I would like to make 3 remarks, because these remarks are important, as already mentioned by Dr. Muralidharan sir, with respect to the new education policy. The first one is related to the way in which the NEP was launched in the beginning. We know the draft revised NEP was presented to the government on December 15, 2018. And government had given a chance for the stakeholders to give their opinion on this for some time. And now they have approved, the cabinet has approved the policy in the full form, even though the policy document available to us is only a very 60 to 64 page document. Cabinet has approved already this, and it is supposed to be on roll, supposed to be started implemented by this. And many of the state governments have already announced that they will implement this policy in letter and spirit in that way. So the entire process in which it was implemented, some people are not so happy about the way in which the entire thing was implemented, because it was not presented to the Parliament before this. The document was not given to the Parliament for a discussion in that way. That is the first important thing. Secondly, as rightly pointed out by Muralidharan sir, the initial response to it, that is also, we were having two extreme views on this. Some people say that it is a national exit policy, NEP, or it is something like a national exclusion policy in that way. Or some say it is a triple C, like commercialization, centralization, communalization, and so on. And they think that the policy should be rejected in toto. The other extreme is that it should be implemented in all ways. They don't find any need for discussion as such. They think that the policy has to be implemented in toto, in an integrated manner in that way. Actually, what we need is a wide discussion, elaborate discussion on each and every part of the policy and take a middle way where we can have a discussion of different issues, how it can be affecting the different stakeholders, the different segments of higher education, and so on. Then we should have the roadmap prepared for the policy and so on in that way. The third one is the timing of the launch. Already the nation is now very much affected by the corona. As per yesterday's statistics, we know there are more than 33 lakh people are now corona positive in our country. And the number of corona deaths is more than 60,000. So there is a psychological impact of this policy among the academia and the common people, students, and so on. Because all the education institutions of the country are closed down. The 37.4 million students in higher education and the 270 million students in the schools, all of them are out of their schools or education institutions, and their teachers are also out. It is at this point the government is implementing this policy, and teachers and students, parents, and different stakeholders, they feel that this is not the right time for the implementation, announcing the implementation of the policy in that way. Such apprehensions are also there. So these three important remarks I would like to share with you. Now I will just make a passing reference to the vision of the policy, which has already been mentioned by the speakers earlier. It envisions an education system rooted in Indian ethos that contribute directly to transforming India sustainably into an equitable and vibrant knowledge society, and so on. So the vision of the policy is to instill among the learners a deep-rooted pride in being an Indian, not only in thought, but also in spirit, intellect, deeds, etc. So this is the basic vision of the policy, for which the policy has given some important aspects. And this policy, we know, it is the first policy after 1986 policy, which is anticipating a reform in both content and structure. And also rightly mentioned by the speakers earlier, the structure of the school education system and higher education system, these two are proposed to be changed by this. And this shows the integrated way or integrated manner or comprehensive manner in which the policy is to be implemented. And this policy has an international dimension also, with respect to sustainable development goals of the United Nations General Assembly, which was passed in 2015 with 169 targets. There are 17 sustainable development goals approved by or adopted by all countries of the world. The first one is no poverty, second one, zero hunger, third one, good health and well-being, and fourth one is the quality education for all. So it is actually as a part of the international commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations General Assembly that India is also adopting this policy. So policy aimed at to have an education system by 2040 that is second to none, with equitable access to education to all. It will be based on the rich heritage and so on. Now we will make a passing reference to the NEP-2020 and higher education. See, given the 21st century requirements, the quality higher education must aim to develop good, thoughtful, well-rounded and creative individuals. So the quality education must enable personal accomplishment and enlightenment, constructive public engagement, and productive contribution to society. It is also envisioned that the education must prepare the students for more meaningful and satisfying lives and work role and enable economic independence and so on. So with this important objective, we have three important milestones. The first one is we want to increase the GER from the present to 26.3% to 50% in 2035. Then to start with the policy from 2021-22 onwards, that is the coming academic year onwards, and the policy will be fully operational by 2030, 2040 in that way. In that decade, it is supposed to be fully operational in that way. So these are, we can take three important milestones of the policy. Now I will go to the first section, 10 important challenges or problems of Indian higher education as viewed by this policy. I will only just running the slides for saving the time. There are important problems identified by this policy, like severely fragmented Indian higher education system, less emphasis on the development of cognitive skills and learning outcome, rigid separation of disciplines with early specialization and streaming of students into narrow areas of study, limited access, particularly in socio-economically disadvantaged areas, with a few higher education institutions that teach local languages, limited teacher institutional autonomy, then inadequate mechanism for merit-based career management and progression of faculty and institutional leaders, then lesser emphasis on research in most of the universities and colleges, and lack of comprehensive research funding across the disciplines, suboptimal governance and leadership of higher education institutions, ineffective regulatory system, large affiliating universities, resulting in low standards of undergraduate education. So these are the 10 important propositions or 10 important problems identified in the national education policy with respect to the higher education segment. Now here, there are one or two points which are missing in this. Number one is the low GER of the weaker sections. The policy is speaking of the low GER of the weaker areas, but of the weaker sections. Similarly, the issues related to the investment in higher education, especially the public-private partnership in investment in higher education, this has not been mentioned. And similarly, the issues related to the internationalization of higher education and attainment of the global standards by the Indian institutions. These are also, these three important points are actually sidelined by these important problems just mentioned by the policy. In the section 2, I will mention the resolution of the challenges as given by this policy and the threats to that. Now, one or two important points I would like to focus. The first one is the institutional restructuring and consolidation of higher education. The vision is that we should have an architecture for higher education with large, well-resourced, vibrant, multidisciplinary institutions. So the consolidation of the current 993 universities and nearly 40,000 colleges into 15,000 large, well-resourced, vibrant, multidisciplinary institutions. This is one important part of the consolidation and restructuring. And three types of universities, as already mentioned by Murali sir. First one, we will have research universities with equal focus on research and teaching. Second, we will have teaching universities. Primary focus will be on teaching with a significant focus on research. And thirdly, we will have autonomous degree granting colleges, and there will be almost exclusive focus on teaching in that way. So these three types of institution will be there, and no other institution will be there in the total structure. And the objective is we will phase out the affiliated colleges and single faculty colleges within 15 years. See, look at that. All the affiliated colleges will be phased out within 15 years. Colleges to be either autonomous or constituent college. No other college will be there. By 2030, all higher education institutions to be multidisciplinary, and every district will have at least one with 3,000 students in that way. And the most important part, I have put it to bold, accreditation to be used as a tool for implementing this. This will be restructuring For that restructuring purpose, accreditation will be used as an important tool that is noteworthy. Now, for this proposal, for this restructuring proposal, I have identified a few threats. Because of the large size of the higher education institution of India, as already I mentioned, the 993 universities, nearly 40,000 colleges, 10,722.55 standalone institutions, and we have 37.4 million students and 15 lakh teachers in that way, large size of higher education institution sector of India. Then we have a multiplicity and diversity of higher education institutions. Actually, the diversity and multiplicity of institutions of India is a representative of the multiplicity or diversity of the Indian culture as well as the Indian nation itself. We have 16 women universities, 1 central open university, 14 state open universities, 1 state private open university, 110 dual mode universities, 548 general universities, 142 technical universities, 63 agricultural universities, 58 medical universities, 23 law universities, 13 Sanskrit universities, 9 other language universities, 106 other category universities. So this is the diversity of the institutions of India. So how to restructure this is a very important issue. Thirdly, the diversity of the stakeholders' interest. Just like you have diverse institutions, we have a diverse stakeholders also and their interest. 37.8% of Indian universities are private universities. 394 universities are situated in rural areas. 77.8% of the colleges are private colleges. And more than 64% of the colleges are purely private colleges, unaided colleges in India. In some states like Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, the figure is 88%, something like that. And 34% of the colleges are single faculty colleges. And more than 83% of them are owned by the private sector. So the diverse institutional interest and so on. The case of Kerala also, the same thing is applicable. When we think of the number of colleges, 820 for unaided colleges, 204 aided colleges, 248 government colleges, so the diversity. And also the wide acceptance and popularity of the affiliating system. It will not be very easy to throw away affiliation within 15 years because affiliation system, despite all the limitations, it has come to stay with us for the last 100 years. And actually, the parents and people, students, they have great confidence in the affiliation system and so on. So these are some threats related to the restructuring. Now, I will only make a passing mention of this. The second important objective towards a more holistic and multidisciplinary education. See, the last part of this slide, a holistic education shall be in the long term. The approach of all undergraduate programs, including those in professional, technical, and vocational disciplines. So in all programs, including professional and technical, vocational discipline, you will have an holistic education. So the basic question is, what is the desired level of multidisciplinarity? Who will decide this desired level of the multidisciplinarity of the different courses? And what are the criteria for the multidisciplinarity? This is the basic issue, an academic question. Third one, we'll have 3 or 4 year degree courses with multiple exit points. After 1 year certificate, 2nd year diploma, 3rd year degree, 4th year you will have a research degree, then 3 year degree with 2 year masters, 4 year degree with 1 year masters, integrated 5 year masters, masters or 4 year degree for PhD with no MPhil, multidisciplinary education and research universities and so on. That will be the structure. Then the third one is the optimum learning environment and support system for the students in terms of faculty autonomy, reforms in curriculum and pedagogy, reforms in the choice-based credit semester system, and integration of the curriculum with the institutional development plan, promotion of the open distance learning. So in all these, the issue is, all these are good ideas. The issue is this, how much freedom will be there for the universities and for the colleges to operate all these things. How, to what extent they will be able to visualize and materialize these important objectives of the policy. Then they also, the fourth one is motivated, energized and capable faculty with more academic freedom, incentives, tenure track appointment and fast track. Already it has been mentioned yesterday by Dr. Prabhat Patnaik that the fast track appointment is the most disappointing part of the young aspirants to the higher education field in that way. So how this is going to be implemented? Then the equity and inclusion in higher education, there are some important mention about it also. A suitable government fund for education of the Sustainable Education Development Goal, SEDGs, will be there. It is said that 6% of the GDP will be spent on education in that way. That is a wishful thinking. We know GDP is only the money value of the goods and services of the country, final value which is produced. So for increasing the proportion of GDP spent on higher education, there must be increased investment in education by both the government as well as by the private sector. So for that, measures are required for increasing the equity and so on. Then the teacher education, you will have 4-year integrated B.Ed by 2030, 3-year degree with a 2-year B.Ed, 4-year degree with 1-year B.Ed. Then there will be entrance for B.Ed, and there will be PhD. For PhD program in education, there will be a teaching component and so on. So there will be a thorough change with respect to the teacher education in the country, which is already facing a lot of serious difficulties. To what extent is in the practical, that is again a problem. Then the seventh one, the policy also aimed at reimagining the vocational education. The basic aim is that by 2025, 50% of the learners will have exposure to vocational education. That is the basic objective of the policy. And here also we have some apprehensions, because what are the skills required for the students at the college level? That is different from the skills required or offered at the school level. So how you can define these skills, which can be integrated with the every disciplines, for example, in arts, commerce, science, etc. How you can give a value addition to that. Now we know the present status of some of the vocational courses run in our colleges. For example, the BVOC program. The BVOC program was started in many colleges, a UGC funded program, but it is not an attractive program for the students. And BVOC program, the conduct of the BVOC program is being very difficulty in most of the colleges, not only in Kerala, but other parts of the country also. Similarly, earlier UGC had a vocationalization experiment with respect to first degree courses. First year degree onwards, they had a vocationalization for first degree. And UGC dropped out that project after 5 years. The evaluation showed that it was not successful vocationalization of the first degree. So we should learn from our experience of vocationalizing higher education or integrating the vocational skill with the higher education. Already we have some burnings with respect to this, bad experiences or bitter experiences with respect to this, which must be properly studied before reimagining the vocational education or integrating vocational education with the general education, etc. Then another important proposal is the National Research Foundation, the fund competitive peer-reviewed grant proposal of all types. So the National Research Foundation will give fund to all academic institutions, universities and colleges, irrespective of the private and public. So research funding will be available to all researchers, research activities, both in the private sector and the public sector. Then another important thing, and also perhaps the most ticklish issue with respect to higher education, is the transformation of the regulatory system of higher education. 4 structures will be set up as 4 independent verticals within one umbrella institution, the Higher Education Commission of India. So HEICE will be the highest vertical of the higher education sector of India. Under it, you will have the National Higher Education Regulatory Council, NHERC, National Accreditation Council, NAC. See, they have dropped the assessment from this. Now there is no assessment, it is only National Accreditation Council. Then Higher Education Grants Council. Instead of UGC, they are going to implement the Higher Education Grants Council. The General Education Council, GEC, in that way. So already Murali sir mentioned about the problem with the regulatory bodies. We have nearly 17, 18 regulatory bodies, all set up by the Acts of Parliament or state legislators, etc. All these regulatory bodies like AICT, UGC, Medical Council, Nursing Council, ICAR, they will all now be put as only the professional standard setting bodies only, PSSB, professional standard setting bodies, and they will not have any regulatory role. The regulation will be taken care of by the National Education Regulatory Council in that way. So in that way, they propose to transform it. Then it is also proposed that there will be a curbing of the commercialization of the higher education, and a happy blend of both private sector and public sector will be there. The philanthropic and public-spirited people or organizations will be encouraged through progressive regimes of fee determination and so on. So there is a provision for the determination of the fees on the basis of the accreditation, etc. All these are some of the questionable propositions at that. Then it also aims at effective governance and leadership of higher education institutions with a suitable system of graded accreditation and graded autonomy in a phased manner over 15 years. All higher education institutions will become independent of self-governing institution pursuing innovation and excellence. There will not be any affiliation. So here the question is, what will be the future of the affiliated aided colleges in states like Kerala or in other parts of the country and so on. Then other key areas are also the professional education, adult education, promotion of Indian languages, art and culture, technology use, then online and digital education, and ensuring equitable use of technology. So I have made a bird's eye view of the NEP and higher education. Now I will pass on to the next section. That is our core part of our discussion today, NEP approach to assessment and accreditation. See, from the final document, which is available with respect to NEP, I quote, the primary mechanism to enable such a regulation will be accreditation, as I already mentioned. The second vertical of higher education council will be therefore a meta-accrediting body called National Accreditation Council. So there is no assessment. Accreditation of institution will be based on primarily on basic norms, public self-disclosure, good governance, and outcomes. It will be carried out by an independent ecosystem of accrediting the institutions supervised and overseen by NAC. The task to function as recognized accreditor shall be awarded to an appropriate number of institutions by NAC. In the short term, a robust system of graded accreditation shall be established, which will specifically face the benchmark of all higher education institutions to achieve set levels of quality and also self-governance and autonomy. In turn, all higher education institutions will aim through their institutional development plan to attain the highest level of accreditation over 15 years and thereby eventually aim to function as self-governing bodies, grant institutions and clusters. And in the long term, accreditation will be a binary process as per the extent of global practice. So now we have what is called graded accreditation. Instead of that, you will have a binary accreditation. I will explain that within a short while. So this is what the policy document says with respect to the accreditation. But in the revised draft of NEP, published in December 2019, it has given details of the accreditation, how it is going to be in the new education policy. And of course, the policy final document endorses what has been given in the revised draft. We will see what is there in the revised draft. So NAC will be a top level accreditor. Already it will be NAC. It will issue licenses to accreditation institutions, train accreditation institutions, AIs, resolve disputes between accreditation institutions and higher education institutions, license to both public and private non-profit institutions as accreditation agencies. Then mentoring accreditation agency cannot be an accreditation agency for the same higher education institution. Suppose one institution is having a mentoring by one accreditation agency, then they cannot accredit it in that way. All accreditation agencies subject to stringent review every 3 to 5 years. And there will be a revised institutional accreditation framework, IAF, subject to revision within 7 years. This is given in the revised draft of policy 2020, and this is a part of the new policy, final policy also, I think. Now, IAF to be responsive and flexible, not rigid and unimaginative, focusing on outcomes and their quality, and not inputs or process parameters. So for 10 years, we will have graded accreditation with graded autonomy subject to review by 2020. By 2030, only binary accreditation will start, and which will start by 2022. So what is binary accreditation? Binary accreditation is actually just like, in simple language, I would say, it is like a pregnancy test or COVID test. You will have either only two results, either it is positive or negative. For pregnancy test, you will have either positive result or negative result. For COVID also, you will have either positive or negative result. In binary accreditation, the institution is either accredited or not accredited. There is no grading. So this they will start by 2022. It is said that. And by 2030, there will be only binary accreditation. Now we have the National Board of Accreditation now. You are familiar with that. The National Board of Accreditation, which is accrediting the courses of the professional institutions, engineering colleges, management institutes, etc. So they accredit not the institution, but the programs. For example, civil engineering program, BTech civil engineering, or MTech computer science, or BTech instrumentation in that way. They accredit the program. There it is either accredited or not accredited. And as per AICTE norms and the Washington Accord of the NBA, only those institutions which have at least 50% of the programs accredited will be allowed to continue in the field as the colleges in that way. So the binary accreditation process is not so familiar to the higher education institutions, especially in the arts and science field. So either will be accredited or not. The problem is that in the case of, there is a usual example given for the anomaly with respect to binary accreditation. I will mention that. In the case of the world famous institution, for example, the Harvard or Massachusetts Institute of Technology, these institutions are accredited. It's an American example I am giving you. There are some institutions which are inferior to these institutions like Harvard or MIT, like Bridgewater State, Simons and IT, etc. Almost you can say within a commutable distance from this Harvard or from MIT. So they are also accredited. So MIT is also accredited, Harvard is also accredited. Less inferior institutions like Bridgewater State or Siemens, they are also accredited. So how the student can choose an institution on the basis of that? How a parent can choose an institution? This is a usual question being asked in the Western countries, especially United States, with respect to the binary accreditations. So till 2030, higher education institutions can choose either graded accreditation or a binary accreditation regime. This is what is expected. And that is one important issue with respect to binary accreditation. It will be there in the new policy. Then institution will be given a time gap of 12-24 months between accreditation and choosing autonomy, which will be a part of the IDP. Now, the institution in our country, for example, those colleges which have more than 3.5 grade, they can apply for autonomy, and if they apply, even if the state government do not agree or university do not agree, UGC will grant them autonomy. So those colleges will be given a time gap of 12-24 months between accreditation and choosing autonomy in that way. Then if they want, they can go for a program accreditation offered by different bodies as it is now for the engineering bodies. And accreditation will also pay special attention to the ODL, open distance learning, will be given special weightage. Institutions which offer ODL, they will be given special weightage. And all education institutions not accredited by 2030 will cease to operate. The Mendi institutions, the Mendi colleges, the representatives of the Mendi colleges, please note that all higher education institutions not accredited by 2030 will cease to operate. This is going to be the biggest challenge for the self-financing colleges of the state or entire country. Because in the case of aided colleges, most of them are accredited now already. Government colleges, government has a responsibility for promoting that. In the case of the self-financing colleges, unless they are accredited by 2030, they will not be allowed to operate in that. So this is an important issue with accreditation. Of course, in the case of accreditation, there are several issues because accreditation is going to be what is called a gatekeeper for fund allotment. Only if you are accredited, you will get fund. I will give a simple example. In the case of RUSA funding, only those colleges who had a grade point between 2.5 and 3.5, they were allowed to apply for RUSA. So all those institutions which had a lower grade, they were not permitted, they were not covered under RUSA. And those who were higher, grade more than 3.5, they were also not allowed in that way. So what happens? There is a gatekeeper's role for accreditation. This gatekeeper's role is not my usage, it is a usage by the US Senate Committee on Health and Education. In a recent report of the Senate Committee of US, United States of America, they have used this usage. The gatekeeper role of the accreditation. How the accreditation is being a watchman with respect to the resource giving or resource dispersal for the higher education institutions and so on. That is an important issue in our country also. Then a phased transition plan of 1 decade for existing colleges to get accredited and become autonomous. Then already accredited colleges to be given graded autonomy within next 3 years. So the colleges which are already accredited, they will be given graded autonomy. Then special funds to support public higher education institutions to prepare for the autonomy along with mentorship. Then on-time grant to newly autonomous universities and government colleges to upgrade infrastructure. All these are already there. Those who are autonomous, they get additional funds with respect to the running of the autonomy or for the initial preparation for the autonomy and so on. So accreditation is taken as an important tool for what is called the restructuring as well as for the quality enhancement of the institution. Not merely an assessment, accreditation is going to have a more and more, I would say, role of a gatekeeper with respect to the availability of public funds for higher education in that. So this is the accreditation regime, I would say, with the available information in the document, as well as by reading different literature, as well as the revised draft of the policy. These are the important features of the new accreditation regime. Now, I would just mention the next section, the challenges of this proposed accreditation regime. What is the reality in our country? The first thing is that there is a huge backlog of non-accredited higher education institutions in the country. I told you, as per the ISS survey, All India Survey of Higher Education, there are 993 universities, 89,993 colleges, and 10,725 standalone institutions. Only 603 universities and 12,653 colleges are accredited as on 26th November 2019. This is the latest available data with the NAC. And there is a huge backlog. I will give a table. Look at this. The accreditation status. In the case of universities, the first cycle, 316 universities are accredited. Colleges, 893 colleges, first cycle. Total 8453 in the first cycle. Second cycle in the country, 166 universities, 3,505 colleges, second cycle. Total 3671 institutions. The third cycle, 74 universities, then 1017 colleges, 1091 total. The fourth cycle, you have only 3 universities, you have only 38 colleges across the country, and you have only 41 institutions all together. which has undergone the 4th cycle of accreditation. See, think of the figure of the number of institutions in India. 993 universities and 40,000 colleges. And you have only 41 institutions out of this large number, unimaginable number, which has undergone the 4th cycle of accreditation. The total number of accredited institutions, universities only 603, colleges 12,653, and total number of institutions accredited so far with valid accreditation only 13,256. So there is a huge backlog of non-accredited institutions. So how you can use accreditation as a tool for restructuring and enhancement of the quality of higher education institutions in the country. That is one basic issue which I would like to mention. Secondly, the assessment outcome of the first cycle of the accreditation. This is very important. It's an important parameter with respect to the way or the trend of accreditation. The grade breakup of accreditation institutions accredited the first cycle as on 26 November. Universities, 56.7% of the universities, that is 208 universities, they got A grade in the first cycle itself. 20.91% colleges, they got A grade, that is altogether 1693 colleges. So total 1,901 colleges, the first institutions in the first cycle, they got A grade. B grade, 140 institutions, universities, that is 38.8% of the universities, they are accredited B grade in the first cycle. Among the colleges, the largest number of colleges, largest proportion, 67.1%, that is 5431 colleges are accredited with the B grade, at B grade. And total you have B grade institutions, 5571 in the first cycle. Then C grade, 12 universities, that is 3.33%, they are C grade universities in the first cycle. Among the colleges, you have 969 colleges which are accredited in the first cycle as C grade. Total you have 981 institutions. So in the case of universities, total 360, then colleges 893, total 8453. So among the accredited institutions that we have seen, the total number, the early table, 8453 institutions are in the first cycle like this. This is a challenge. How to upgrade these colleges? That is, these 67.1% colleges, B grade colleges to A grade in the graded accreditation regime, or how to upgrade the C grade colleges to B grade, A grade, A plus, A double plus as per the present regime, and how to bring up them to the world standards or as envisioned by the document and so on. That is the second important challenge. And thirdly, this is again an issue. The assessors who are on board with me, this program, they will agree with me, I'm sure. There is a failure to maintain and secure higher grades in re-accreditation. The experience of many institutions, including in Kerala, there is a disturbing trend after the introduction of the revised accreditation framework by NASC. A large number of institutions have failed to secure higher grade or score or to maintain the same grade or score in the subsequent cycle of accreditation. So we have premier institutions in the state of Kerala which were having higher grade earlier. They have been downgraded. This had raised apprehension that the revised accreditation framework is not institutional friendly, especially in the case of higher education institutions in rural areas. However, some institutions, of course, have managed to improve their grade or score also. So this at national level, this is an issue. So a detailed analysis of this phenomenon is required at the national level before embarking on a revision on the present accreditation regime. What happened to these institutions which once secured a very high grade in accreditation? Why they are now at a lower grade? What were the factors, etc.? Not only institutional introspection is required. Introspection at the state level and national level is also required, along with the introspection at the institutional level and integrating the input with the institutional development plan and so on. Then, another disturbing trend in the present situation is the increasing number of dropout of higher education institutions. See, after the introduction of the revised accreditation framework in July 17, there is an increasing number of dropout. One statistics I will give you, between 1st July 17 and 5th April 19, of the 2112 institutional information quality assessment filed, 1 or 2 were rejected by NAC and 551 did not file SSR. So those who just file IIQA, a large proportion of them, they do not upload the SSR. So a dropout is there. During the same period, of the 1019 result announced under RIF, 898 higher education institutions were accredited, 12 were non-accredited, and 73 were not pre-qualified, and 36 were withdrawn or files closed or withheld or non-compliant. So what does it show? It shows that the lack of institutional preparedness of the higher education institutions to go for accreditation. It is here the role of the mentor institution like Nehru Arts and Science College, Kanhangad, becoming very significant. The 7 mentee institutions under this college, they should get proper guidance, proper input, proper resources, proper exposure to the methodology, and they should be properly monitored and mentored to have an accredited status so that they do not drop out from the entire process in that way. So these are the 4 important challenges that we face with respect to accreditation when we think of the revised accreditation in terms of a shift from the graded accreditation to a binary accreditation process. There are several other things which because of shortage of time, I don't want to discuss in that way. And these are some of the major important points that I would like to highlight with respect to accreditation and the NEP, New Education Policy. Now, there are some other issues also to be mentioned in this education policy. For example, the problems of the state level plans and state universities. See, higher education is in the concurrent list. So the state governments, they have a state higher education plan. Because the state universities are supported by the state government. And there's a grant, the state government, by the state government, the state universities. All the government colleges, they're also given grant by the state government for their development and all this. So the state level plan for higher education and also the state universities, this should be concomitant or consistent with the national level plans and so on. This is a point where many state governments, including Kerala, have expressed that NEP will have some issues to be resolved with respect to the general federal structure as well as the federal structure of the education in the country. As a federal country, as a federal nation, not only their own structure, but as well with the education aspect also, the federal structure is there. The state universities, how we can take care of the state universities, all of them came up with state acts passed by the state legislatures and so on. Similarly, the beginning I mentioned, the challenges of attaining global competitiveness. How you can attain global competitiveness of your higher education institutions, which are based on the Indian culture and Indian ethos, and by integrating professional education with, I would say, a holistic education or value education. There will be several inconsistencies. How you can arrive at a desired level of all these things so that you will have a happy synthesis of this rather inconsistent, if not contradictory, aspects related to higher education. Because the global market, the requirement for the global market, that demand separate set of skills for the students. To what extent or how you can impart these skills with respect to or by using the language policy as envisioned in the new education policy. How you can give a global competitiveness or capacity for our youngsters, how to equip them with the 24th and 21st century, with the training in the culture, Indian tradition, by integrating all these things with the technical education, professional education, and so on. So, the attainment of the global competitiveness of the Indian higher education system, this is not explicitly taken care of by the policy, I would say. Even though it is taken as an important vision in the document, what is the roadmap? How you can make all these institutions globally competitive? The integration of the professional education with the higher education. What is the happy synthesis of this? Professional education and higher education, how you can have a happy synthesis of that? How you can have a content with respect to these? All these are things to be decided. The need for more public investment, I already mentioned that. Because just by envisioning that 6% of the GDP is to be set apart for higher education, no one is going to set apart like that, because that is the concept of GDP. Unless and until the public investment increase in higher education and corresponding investment by the private sector also increase in higher education, then only you will have a 6% GDP to be spent on education. So there should be need for more public investment as well as more PPP, public-private partnership in higher education in that way. That is to be highlighted, taken care of. These are some of the other issues to be addressed. Then, I would also mention, not only, we are not mentioning about the negative sides, there are some opportunities, I would say. The higher education policy, the new policy, is giving some opportunities for us. There is a striving for quality and survival of the fittest. So only those institutions which are fittest, they will survive, unless they are publicly supported by funds. So there will be a striving for quality, an inner desire to have quality, increase quality, and a roadmap by the institutions for increasing quality and so on. Then autonomy and flexibility. And education institutions, they will have greater level of autonomy, it is promised. Flexibility with respect to their operations and so on. So what is the desired level of autonomy? In the case of Kerala, it has been a great issue of discussion earlier when we were granting autonomous status to the colleges. What is the level of autonomy? Is it only academic autonomy? Whether there will be financial autonomy? So what is the borderline between the academic autonomy and financial autonomy in that way? Then investment in private by private providers. So policy, of course, policy is opening the door to the private sector investment in higher education. So increasingly, we are hearing the term higher education industry. That is an alarming term, I would say. Higher education industry. In some deliberations at national level, we hear the term that those organizations, those business houses, they are entering into higher education industry. Higher education is viewed as an industry, not as a social good or a public good, something like that. So the private providers, when they come to higher education, what is the regulatory framework for that? To what extent they will be given freedom with respect to fee collection, admission, protecting the interest of the weaker sections, catering the requirement of the weaker areas, and so on. So this opportunity, again, the private providers, they are coming, it's an opportunity. At the same time, they should be very judiciously used. Then another important thing is a research fund for private sector. Of course, private sector research is going on. At national level, we know several private national laboratories are there. So research fund will be made available to the private institutions also from the public, depending upon the quality of the research and so on. Then the multiple exit proposed by the education, the restructuring of degree courses, and credit bank and credit transfer. This is supposed to be advantageous for the students. The student who drop out the first year, he get a certificate. Second year, he may get a diploma. If you drop out after 3 years, he may get a degree. After fourth year, he will get a degree with research in that way. So multiple exit. And the credit that once he gained in one university or in one college, that can be transferred to another university or another college where you want to enroll in that way. So this again an opportunity for the students. So this, of course, how you can make it, operationalize it, how you can materialize it. For all this, we need a roadmap for that. So what is needed is we should have this document to be thoroughly discussed in the parliament, I would say, because it has been approved by the cabinet, okay. And of course, government is in a hurry in implementing the policy. Already the Union Ministry of Human Resources Development has been renamed as the Ministry of Education. Already, the President of India, His Excellency, has already given assent for that, and Gazette notification has already come on 17th August by renaming the Ministry of Human Resource Development as the Ministry of Education. And actually, it is worth mentioning that the renaming of the MHRD as Ministry of Education is only just a secondary recommendation of the document. The document was mentioning that to bring back the focus on education, it is desirable to rename. It is desirable to rename the Ministry of Human Resource Development to Ministry of Education. It's only desirable, they have mentioned. But government in a hurry, they have gone for just renaming it as Ministry of Education in that way. See, it is not merely a matter of renaming a ministry. The way in which, the speed with which the government want to introduce or implement the education policy or new education policy, this move is indicative of that. The speed with which this has been done by the government, it's indicative of the speed with which the government want to implement the policy. So we should have a simultaneous discussion with all stakeholders of education. In school education, of course, it is very important. School education, discussion with the stakeholders is very important because a complete restructuring of school education is going to happen. The language policy is also widely debated. So we should have a thorough discussion with all stakeholders at state level, at national level, at organization level, and so on. Then the measures to address the anxieties of all people, that is required. All stakeholders, they should be given chances for addressing the anxieties. And there should be a mechanism or a roadmap for implementation of the policy. This should be prepared. See, some states have already announced that they will implement the policy immediately. I think without much thought, they have announced that they are going to implement the policy. Okay, what is the roadmap? They have not prepared. The state governments have not prepared the roadmap for that. So the roadmap has to be prepared, the mechanism to be determined, and so on. And for which you require, as per the policy, empowering the old Central Advisory Board of Education, CAB. There is a Central Advisory Board of Education which will monitor the implementation of the policy. CAB was a committee, Central Advisory Board, which came into existence in 1920, actually, much before independence. It was reconstituted in 2004, and you have the elected members of the parliament, 7 members are there, all the education ministers are there, then the heads of the different setting bodies, standard setting bodies, invitees are there. So this is supposed to monitor. So instead of an advisory body, the Central Advisory Board on Education, that should be empowered for that in that way. So a lot of measures are required. And we know we have numerous legislations related to the higher education in the country. Not only higher education, with respect to the education, primary education, etc. Numerous legislations are there. Both the central legislations as well as state legislations. So how you can reconcile all these? with an umbrella legislation. Murali sir was mentioning that it is a vision document. So how to materialize the vision document, for which you require a lot of amendments, a lot of repeal of the existing legislations, which has to be passed by the parliament. That means a lot of homework is required. The coming days and coming months are not easy for the union government or for the state governments or for the universities. Because all these legislation should be properly framed. This has to be passed through the respective bodies and so on, and the process is required for implementing the policy. And the committee itself or the report itself has said that an integrated, comprehensive implementation is required, not in a piecemeal manner. If the policy is implemented in a piecemeal manner, that will adversely affect the quality, the desired objectives, etc. It will create a lot of problems in the already problematic education segment. So we require much time, much patience for preparing all these. So ultimately, what I suggest is that the National Education Policy 2020 is not to be a political agenda, but to be a national agenda. So those who fully oppose the policy, they will have some political agenda, sometimes we don't know. Those who fully support and say that it should be implemented in electoral spirit, they have their political agenda. But higher education, particular education in general, it is a matter of the future of generations of this great country. It is not a simple affair where you can have a trial and error. You cannot experiment with the generations by implementing experiments in education. No trial and error is possible. We should have a thought out plan. It should be a national agenda, not a political agenda. This is very important. We should emphasize this in webinars like this. That is why we are different from other people who just say, just a rhetoric on the defects of the policy or merits of the policy. We should have the national agenda. How you can improve the education sector. How you can identify the issues, and we should be able to correct in that way. And for that, you require complete work, thorough work on the part of the union government, on the part of the academicians, on the part of the legislatures, both the parliament and state, and entire academic fraternity who are shaping the destiny of the future of this country. With these words, I conclude my presentation. I thank you for the organizers for giving me a chance, and I wish you all the best. Stay safe. Happy Onam. Thank you. Jai Hind. Now I will open this floor for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Usman sir, for your beautiful presentation with an element of clarity throughout your discourse. Now we move on to observations of participants. Question and answer. Let me begin my question. Sir, എൻ്റെ ആദ്യത്തെ ചോദ്യം, നമ്മൾ മൾട്ടിപ്പിൾ എൻട്രീസ് ആൻഡ് എക്സിറ്റ് ആണ് ഇപ്പോൾ ഈ അണ്ടർ ഗ്രാജുവേറ്റ് എഡ്യൂക്കേഷനിൽ ഇപ്പോൾ ഈ പോളിസിയിൽ പറയുന്നത്. നമ്മുടെ ഈ രാജ്യത്ത് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നമ്മുടെ യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റികളിൽ അത് എത്രമാത്രം സക്സസ്ഫുൾ ആയിട്ട് നടപ്പിലാക്കാൻ പറ്റുമെന്നത് ഒരു ചോദ്യമാണ്. കാരണം ഒരു വർഷത്തിന് ശേഷം കുറച്ച് കുട്ടികൾ ആ ബാച്ചിൽ നിന്ന് പോവുകയാണെങ്കിൽ അത് വർക്ക് ലോഡിനെയൊക്കെ ബാധിക്കും. അപ്പൊ ഇത് ഈ മൾട്ടിപ്പിൾ എൻട്രി എക്സിറ്റ് എന്ന കൺസെപ്റ്റ് വെസ്റ്റേൺ കോപ്പി ചെയ്തതാണ്, കട്ട് ആൻഡ് പേസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്തതാണ്. കാരണം അവിടെ ഈ ഹയർ എഡ്യൂക്കേഷൻ സ്പോൺസർ ചെയ്യുന്നത് അവരുടെ പേരൻസ് അല്ല, സ്വന്തം തന്നെ കുട്ടികൾ അതിനുള്ള പണം കണ്ടെത്തണം. പക്ഷെ നമ്മുടെ രാജ്യത്തെ സ്ഥിതി അതല്ല. നമ്മുടെ രാജ്യത്ത് നമ്മുടെ പേരൻസ് ആണ് ഹയർ എഡ്യൂക്കേഷൻ കംപ്ലീറ്റ് സ്പോൺസർ ചെയ്യുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ അവരൊരു ഉദ്ദേശത്തോട് കൂടിയിട്ടാണ് ഒരു കുട്ടിയെ ചേർക്കുക. ഒരു കൊല്ലം പിന്നെ കുട്ടിയെ ചേർത്തിട്ട് അടുത്ത കൊല്ലം തന്നെ കുട്ടിയെ അത് ഇട്ടേച്ച് പോവുകയാണെങ്കിൽ നമ്മളെ പേരൻസ് ഏത് രീതിയിലാണ് അതിനെ കാണുക? അപ്പൊ ഇതൊരു സാറിന്റെ അഭിപ്രായം എന്താണ് ഇതിനെ കുറിച്ച്?
I fully agree with you, sir. I fully endorse your view. Because നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ മൾട്ടിപ്പിൾ എൻട്രി എക്സിറ്റ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് നേരത്തെ തന്നെ ഇവിടെ ഇത് ഈ ഇന്ദിരാഗാന്ധി നാഷണൽ ഓപ്പൺ യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റി ഇതൊരു എക്സ്പെരിമെന്റ് മുമ്പ് നടത്തിയതാണ്, സാറിന് അറിയാമല്ലോ. അതായത് ഒരു കോഴ്സ് ചേർന്ന് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ 1 year ആ കോഴ്സ് കംപ്ലീറ്റ് ചെയ്താൽ അവർക്കൊരു സർട്ടിഫിക്കറ്റ്, 2 കൊല്ലം കംപ്ലീറ്റ് ചെയ്താൽ അസോസിയേറ്റ് ഡിഗ്രി, 3ാമത്തെ വർഷം ഡിഗ്രി. ആ രീതിയിൽ അവർ ഇൻസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂഷൻസ്, കമ്മ്യൂണിറ്റി കോളേജസ് എന്ന രീതിയിൽ വെസ്റ്റേൺ കൺട്രീസിൽ ഇതിൽ കൊണ്ടുവന്നു. പക്ഷേ ഇറ്റ് വാസ് എ ടോട്ടൽ ഫെയിലിയർ. ഓൾ ദ കമ്മ്യൂണിറ്റി കോളേജസ്, more than 200 community colleges, all of them closed down. Myself had started a college, actually a community college with our college, sister institution. We could close down, we had to close down. അപ്പോൾ ഇത് വളരെ ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടുള്ള കാര്യമാണ്. സാറ് പറഞ്ഞ വളരെ ഒരു വലിയ അപ്രഹെൻഷനാണ്. അത് നമ്മൾ പാരൻസ് ഫേസ് ചെയ്യേണ്ടതാണ്, അധ്യാപകർ ഫേസ് ചെയ്യേണ്ടതാണ്, ടീച്ചേഴ്സിന്റെ വർക്കൗട്ടുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട് മാത്രമല്ല അവിടെ പ്രോബ്ലംസ് വേറെ വരുന്നുണ്ട്. നമ്മളെ സിലബസ് റിവിഷനുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട കാര്യങ്ങൾ, അത്തരം പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ ഒരുപാട് വരുന്നുണ്ട്. അവിടെ ഒരു കുട്ടി ഒരു 5 വർഷം മുമ്പ് ഒരു കോഴ്സ് പഠിച്ചിട്ട് ആ കുട്ടി ഇപ്പോൾ ഫസ്റ്റ് ഇയർ അന്ന് ഡ്രോപ്പ് ഔട്ടായി. ആ കുട്ടി 5 വർഷം കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് നമ്മുടെ കോളേജിലെ BA പ്രോഗ്രാമിൽ, BCom പ്രോഗ്രാം അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സയൻസ് പ്രോഗ്രാമിൽ വരുമ്പോഴേ ഈ സിലബസ് ഒരുപാട് മാറ്റങ്ങൾ ഇതിനകം വന്നു കഴിഞ്ഞു. ആ കുട്ടി എങ്ങനെ ഇത് കോപ്പപ്പ് ചെയ്യും? ഇത് വെരി ഡിഫിക്കൽട്ട് ഫോർ ഹിം. കാരണം 1 വർഷം പഠിച്ചിട്ട് അയാൾ വേറെന്തോ ഗൾഫിൽ പോയി വേറെന്തോ ജോലിക്ക് പോയി ഇങ്ങനെയായിരിക്കും. പിന്നെ അയാൾ 5 വർഷം കഴിഞ്ഞ് വന്ന് ഇവിടെ ജോയിൻ ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ ഹൗ യു ക്യാൻ കോപ്പ്? ഒരുപാട് ഇഷ്യൂസ് ഉണ്ട്, ഡിഫിക്കൽട്ടീസ്. സി, എഡ്യൂക്കേഷൻ ഈസ് എ കണ്ടിന്യൂസ് പ്രോസസ്. വി അഗ്രി വിത്ത് ദാറ്റ്. ആൻഡ് ദർ ഈസ് ലൈഫ് ലോങ് ലേണിംഗ് ഓൾസോ. പക്ഷേ ടു സെർവ് ദ പർപ്പസ് ഇറ്റ് ഷുഡ് ബി വിത്തൗട്ട് എ ബ്രേക്ക്. അതാണല്ലോ നമ്മളൊക്കെ വിചാരിക്കുന്നത്. ആ ബ്രേക്ക് ഇല്ലാതെ പോയാൽ മാത്രമേ ഡിസൈഡ് പർപ്പസ് ഉണ്ടാവൂ, ഡിസൈഡ് സർവൈവ്. ഐ ഫുള്ളി അഗ്രി വിത്ത് യു. ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് എ ഗ്രേറ്റ് കൺസേൺ. ഇത് സ്റ്റുഡൻസിന്റെ കൺസേൺ കൂടിയാണ്. അവർക്ക് തോന്നുന്നുണ്ട് അവിടെ ഫ്രീഡം ഉണ്ട്, നല്ലതാണ് തോന്നുന്നുണ്ട്. പക്ഷേ ആഫ്റ്റർ 4 years or 5 years when they come back, they find a totally different campus, totally different course. They will be alienated. They will have a feeling of alienation in the campus. നമ്മൾ ചില സിനിമയിലൊക്കെ കാണുന്നുണ്ടല്ലോ, ചില മലയാള സിനിമയിലൊക്കെ ഉണ്ടായിട്ടുണ്ടല്ലോ, 10 കൊല്ലം കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് അവന്മാർ PG പഠിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി കോളേജ് ചേർന്ന സിനിമയിൽ നമ്മൾ കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ട്. ബട്ട് അപ്പം ആ സിനിമ ആ കാര്യം രസകരമായിട്ട് പറയുന്നുണ്ട്. അവരവിടെ റീ എൻട്രി അല്ല, അവർ വേറെ കോഴ്സിന് അവിടെ ചേരുകയാണ് അതേ കോളേജിൽ. പക്ഷേ ദർ ഈസ് എ ജനറേഷൻ ഗ്യാപ്പ്. ഇത് ഒരുപാട് പ്രോബ്ലമാണ് സബ്ജക്റ്റിന്റെ. നമുക്കറിയാം സയൻസ് സബ്ജക്റ്റ് ഒക്കെ ഒരുപാട് കമ്പ്യൂട്ടർ സയൻസ് ഇങ്ങനെ സബ്ജക്റ്റുകളൊക്കെ പ്രശ്നം. അതുകൊണ്ട് അതാ ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞത്, ഇത് വർക്ക്ഔട്ട് ചെയ്യണമെങ്കിൽ കുറച്ച് പ്രയാസം ഉണ്ടാവും. ഓക്കെ സർ, താങ്ക് യു ഫോർ ദ ഒബ്സർവേഷൻ.
Participants unmute ചെയ്ത് ചോദിച്ചോളൂ. Participants, please.
So you can set in the box also. You can put your please.
Hello, sir. Really, thank you, sir, for your vibrant presentation. Sir, my question is regarding about the spending in higher education institution, because the vision of to double the GER, gross enrollment ratio, to 50% by 2035. That's a good thing, and we all dream about. And 6% on GDP for education budget and all. But will it be balanced, sir? Because what we are practicing now is the bulk spending go for some few institutions such as IITs, central universities, and some other research institutions. But what about the colleges like us and universities like us?
Yes, that is a very relevant question, sir. We have problems with the funding of the institutions in our country. See, public funding is required. Public funding is more and more public funding is required. Along with that, you should have a funding for the private institutions by the private sector also. But the problem is that with respect to public funding, I used to say there is an academic vicious circle of poverty. Those who are from economics background, they are aware of what is a vicious circle of poverty. Why you are poor? Because you have a low income. Okay, you are unemployed. That is why you are poor. So you have a low income, and you are unemployed. Therefore, you are poor. And since you are poor, you cannot have education. The same way, there is an academic vicious circle of poverty, where on education institution, which is already poor, it is accredited at a low grade because their infrastructure is very bad, or their faculty is not so high standard. The students are from the first generation learners, etc., etc. Issues are there, and because of that, they get a low accreditation. And because of low accreditation, what happens? They are not getting any public funds. Best example is RUSA. You are right, RUSA. The colleges, for example, in Kerala, only those colleges they were allowed to apply for RUSA funding with, you can say, a particular grade point. All the colleges which are below that, they were not even admitted to the scheme. That means those who are good, they get more and more. So accreditation is going as a gatekeeper of public funding. The gatekeeper. This is not my usage, I told you. It is United States Senate Committee usage. Accreditation is used as a gatekeeper. So for increasing public funding, we should have a careful strategy for giving funds to the rural institutions. I told you 398 universities are in the rural area in India. The colleges are also in the 60% colleges are also in the rural area. So rural colleges, rural institutions, they should get a priority in funding in that way. That is a problem with the new policy also. So unless it is devised properly, the present inequity will continue. That is my observation. Thank you, sir, for the observation. So,
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Sir, what is it?
My doubt is
introduce you, sir. Introduce you.
Chandra, retired from London College, now working at Kalpam Arts and College, Kanhangad.
Okay.
So my doubt is, how much time is needed for the state governments to implement this new educational system in their states? Now it is going to be a central plan. Centralization is one of the focal points of the new education policy. So what are needed for the state governments to prepare well to implement the new education plan in their state?
See, state government should be given sufficient plan, sufficient time, sufficient flexibility with respect to this. That is very important. I told you that some states have already announced that they are going to implement it immediately in that way. It's only a political agenda for them, not an educational agenda. So yesterday, in deliberations which took place in Kerala, for example, to deliver the online webinar by the government of Kerala. So government of Kerala made it clear, we require time for that. We require discussions on that. The state government should have its own time for preparing the state development plan, and all institutions should be given a proper planning time, etc. Especially school education. See, school education, it is going to be very difficult. In higher education, perhaps universities have autonomy. Let us say, at least in a limited sense, universities have academic autonomy, and colleges are also having some autonomy. But in the case of school education, what happens? If the central board designed the syllabus for all the educational institutions of the country, we may think that it is a desirable proposition, attractive proposition. What happens actually? What about the state cultures, the ethnic cultures, the state specificities? So all these will be neglected. So I would say we require sufficient time. All the state governments should take sufficient time to prepare their own roadmap within the policy to attain the aspirations of the state. And not only that, there are some highly backward states in higher education where the college density is very low. There are states where college density is very high. There is a division with respect to what is called a GER among the states and so on. So state government should be given sufficient time. The policy can be only you can say deadline, maximum deadline, that is given now there. So center should not dictate the state. Center should not dictate the state. The state should have the liberty to have its own plan. That is my argument. Sir, thank you, sir, for your comment. Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for your nice presentation of the entire topic. Thank you.
Murali, chat box le ഒരു question ഉണ്ട് അതൊന്ന് വായിച്ചോളൂ മുരളി. Sister Teresa.
Okay. She is my friend. I think Teresa sister has joined from outside Kerala. Not a normal ear sector. This is what I mentioned, dear sister. Youth is the greatest wealth of our nation now. So we have to have a proper reflection and discussion on this matter. I told you the timing of this is not right enough. See the way in which the government has taken haste in this. See, the midnight of the last, I was 17th, they have published a Gazette notification renaming the MHRD as Ministry of Education. Immediately after, the President of India gave assent. So why we should have a haste for implementing this? Already these people, we know this much people are affected by the corona, and more than 33,000 corona deaths, more than 60 lakh corona positive cases. So without proper discussion, I told you there is a psychological impact of this policy now. The students, teachers and parents, everybody have inhibitions in them now. What is going to happen to our school? Whether when we go back to schools after the corona period, whether the situation will be same as before. They are afraid of that. What is going to happen in that way? So there are several issues, especially school education. Higher education, you can say, to some extent, we are enlightened by this discussion. School education, actually, there are a multiplicity of stakeholders in that way. So we should have proper thinking. I repeat it, that is, the policy has to be implemented not as a trial and error. You cannot experiment with the future of generations. Once you do this and withdraw this, not possible, not a trial and error. We should have the implementation, a thoughtful planning and thoughtful strategy and so on. Thank you, sister, for your observation, rich observation. Thank you.
Sir, sir, one more from Sister Teresa, one more comment is there.
Oh, I have seen.
In the NEP,
more centralized. Okay, privatized, okay.
Yes, sir.
More centralization is there. We agree with that. That is one important apprehension also expressed by them. Because what happened to some of the institutions which are purely private, they were given some status, let us say some superlative status, etc., etc. So privatization of higher education, we are not totally against it. The thing is that the private providers, the private players, they should be properly regulated. Now, recent example in Kerala, we know, in Cochin, there was an advertisement in all the national dailies, front page advertisement of in all the national dailies, including the Hindu national daily, regarding advertisement of a private university opening a center in Cochin. What they were doing, these private universities were the executives, the marketing executives. I am ashamed of using that term in higher education. Marketing executives of higher education institution, a university. I am ashamed of using that. The marketing executive of the university came to me, came to this office where I am sitting now. He came and just told me that we will give you a center, an off-campus center. Sir, they are offering me a center. I asked them, why? What is the condition? Yeah, you can offer our course and you can collect fees, and a proportion of the fees will be given to you. And we will conduct the course, we will conduct the exam. Your student will be benefited. I asked about the fees, unimaginable. And the same thing they have done in all the colleges in the region. The marketing executives, the higher education degree selling shops, they are going to the different places and selling these things. Marketing. I am ashamed of using the term marketing of higher education. So we have a reputed institution in the country, private institution in the country. No marketing is required. People are after them to get admission. So privatization with the exact or correct regulatory mechanism is required in our country. Otherwise, education will have no access and no equity in that way. So I endorse the views of Sister Teresa, not only centralization, decommercialization. That is why the people are just afraid of this, of the implementation of the policy, the way in which it is going to be implemented in that way. Okay. Thank you, sister.
One more question from me, sir. What about the vocationalization in the early stages of education?
Yes, I have apprehensions, sir, about it, vocationalization. See, in schools, for example, when we were students, myself and Murali, sir, in our generation, when we were school students, we had some kind of vocationalization. നമ്മൾ സ്കൂൾ പഠിക്കുന്ന കാലത്ത് നമ്മൾ ആശാരിപ്പണി, അതുപോലെ തന്നെ പെരുമ്പൊക്കെ, ബ്ലാക്ക് സ്മിത്ത്, ഇതൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ പഠിച്ചിരുന്നു. എന്തെങ്കിലും കാര്യം നമുക്ക് കിട്ടിയിട്ടുണ്ടോ? നമുക്ക് ഒരു പ്രയോജനം ഉണ്ടായിട്ടില്ലോ. നമ്മൾ അത് വേറെ സാറന്മാരുണ്ടായിരുന്നു, അവർ ശമ്പളം കിട്ടി ജീവിച്ച് പോയി എന്നല്ലാണ്ട് നമുക്ക് ആ ഒരു ആ ജോലിയോട് നമുക്ക് ഇപ്പൊ പ്ലംബിങ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇങ്ങനത്തെ കാര്യങ്ങൾ, ഈ വൊക്കേഷണലൈസേഷൻ ഇതാണോ നമുക്ക് ആവശ്യമുള്ളത്? അതുപോലെ ഹയർ എഡ്യൂക്കേഷൻ നമ്മൾ വൊക്കേഷണലൈസ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ ഓൾറെഡി നമ്മൾ നേരത്തെ ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞല്ലോ, UGCയുടെ വൊക്കേഷണലൈസേഷൻ ഓഫ് ഫസ്റ്റ് ഡിഗ്രി എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് അവർ വളരെ കൊട്ടിഘോഷിച്ച് ഗ്രാൻഡ് കൊടുത്ത് 5 കൊല്ലം ഗ്രാൻഡ് കൊടുത്തിട്ട് വൊക്കേഷണലൈസേഷൻ ഓഫ് ഫസ്റ്റ് ഡിഗ്രി ഞങ്ങൾ ഫറൂഖ് കോളേജിൽ അത് തുടങ്ങിയിരുന്നു. എക്കണോമിക്സിൽ വൊക്കേഷണൽ ഫോറിൻ ട്രേഡ് എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സ്ട്രീം കൊണ്ടുവന്ന് പകുതി കുട്ടികൾ ഫോറിൻ ട്രേഡും പകുതി കുട്ടികൾ ജനറൽ എക്കണോമിക്സും. 5 കൊല്ലം കഴിഞ്ഞപ്പോൾ എന്തായി? ആ ഗ്രാൻഡ് നിന്നു, ആ പ്രോഗ്രാം നിർത്തിപ്പോയി. ഈ വൊക്കേഷണൽ കഴിഞ്ഞ കുട്ടികൾക്ക് അവർക്ക് പിന്നെ MA-ക്ക് പോകാൻ പറ്റുന്നില്ല. അവർ വൊക്കേഷണൽ സ്ട്രീമിൽ നിന്ന് വന്നവരാണ്, അവിടെ MA എക്കണോമിക്സിന് അഡ്മിഷൻ കൊടുക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ല യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റി. പിന്നെ നമ്മളൊക്കെ അന്ന് ഫോട്ടോ സ്റ്റഡീസിന്റെ ഭാഗമായതുകൊണ്ട് അവർക്കും പോകാൻ പറ്റും. അപ്പൊ BEd-ന് പോകുമ്പോൾ അവിടെ പ്രശ്നം വന്നു, BEd എടുക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ല അവര് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു. അപ്പോൾ ഇതാണ് നമ്മുടെ വൊക്കേഷണലൈസേഷൻ. അപ്പൊ തോട്ട്ഫുൾ ആയിട്ട് ചെയ്തില്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇറ്റ് ബി വെരി ഡിഫിക്കൽട്ട്. ഞാൻ നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞല്ലോ, ഈ അവർ പറയുന്ന രീതിയിൽ 50% ഈ സ്കില്ല് കൊടുക്കണമെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഏതൊക്കെ സ്കില്ലാണ് 21st സെഞ്ചുറിക്ക് ആവശ്യം എന്ന് നമ്മൾ ഐഡന്റിഫൈ ചെയ്യണം. അത് ഐഡന്റിഫൈ ചെയ്തിട്ട് വേണം നമ്മളിത് കൊടുക്കാനായിട്ട്. അതല്ലെങ്കിൽ അത് ഇറ്റ് വിൽ ബി പ്ലേ മോർ ഡേഞ്ചർ വിൽ ബി ദാൻ ദ ബെനിഫിറ്റ്. ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് എ പ്രോബ്ലം. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. If there are no further queries, I think we can stop.
ആർക്കെങ്കിലും ചോദിക്കാൻ ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ പ്ലീസ് അൺമ്യൂട്ട് ആൻഡ് ആസ്ക്. അതല്ലെങ്കിൽ നമുക്ക് അടുത്ത ഐറ്റത്തിലേക്ക് കടക്കാം അജണ്ടയിലെ.
Anyway, I am very happy that you have raised some. The Mendi colleges, I think the representatives of the Mendi colleges, please take care of this. Your mentor, you are so fortunate that you have a great mentor institution and a great ambassador, accreditation ambassador, and a very good management, I would say, very magnanimous management of Nehru Arts and Science College. Personally, I don't have acquaintance with them, but I know because I am the secretary of the Private College Management Association also in Kerala. So I am also observing each and every college, things going on. And you are so fortunate. So make use of the expertise of your mentor institution and see that some quality initiatives are there in the college. Because in Northern Kerala, especially, we have extremely rural background institutions. But we are fortunate, I would say, the students from Northern Kerala, even though they are first learners, they are very, very intelligent students we are getting. Very intelligent students, very committed students we are getting in the northern part of Kerala in that way. They are highly committed, they are highly intelligent, and parents are also very much aware of their issues because they are first generation learners. So you are doing a great service actually. So make use of the opportunities given by your mentor and your accreditation ambassador for promoting your institution for the future of your students in that way. That is my humble desire, humble wish. Okay, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Usman sir, for your nice words. We move on to next item. Murali, any announcement now regarding feedback?
Sir, the same form can be used for feedback. We have modified that registration form into a feedback form. So all the delegates can utilize the same registration link for feedbacking. So they can just click that registration form. Now it is turned into a feedback form.
What about the e-certificates?
E-certificate will be according to the registration and with respect to the feedback, sir. I mean, not with the comment, just with we have to confirm whether they have
with respect to the participation. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. K.V. Murali, for the update, and may I call upon Mr. Vijay Kumar, Executive Member of IQAC and the Senate Member of Kannur University, to propose a vote of thanks. Please, over to Mr. Vijay Kumar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So, honorable dignitaries, distinguished guests, respected chairman, and dear participants, on behalf of UGC Paramash Scheme, IQAC, and the entire fraternity of Nehru Arts and Science College, Kanhangad, I'm really feel best pleasure to propose a vote of thanks to this August gathering. Firstly, I would take the opportunity to say our gratitude to the, as our chief guest mentioned, the most vibrant, distinguished, and dynamic chairman of the function, Dr. A. Muralidharan sir. Sir, your wise mentorship and encouragement will be a great motivation to us always. And you always listen to us and ready to solve our problems always when we approach you, sir. Thank you, sir. And humbly thanks to our respected principal, Dr. T. Vijayan, sir, today's inaugurator. Sir, without your exceptional leadership, guidance, and motivation, we cannot make this function be more vibrant and this much success, sir. Thank you, sir, for your supporting. Let me take the privilege of thanking the most distinguished, eminent speaker and precious guest of the day, Dr. M. Usman, sir, for his grace address of the subject which is most relevant in contemporary scenario. Dear sir, we definitely delighted with your thought-provoking and knowledgeable deliberations on NEP and its accreditation issues through the different 5 sections. Even though the present policy has some lacunas, the present policy will become a great success with the persons like you, sir, and like your contributions. And definitely we are sure that the great support and contribution of the people like you, let's make the nations be a very good education hub, sir. Thank you, sir, once again. And the special thanks to Dr. K.V. Murali, sir, the IQAC coordinator, and motivating and dynamic leadership. Sir, you gave your valuable time for fixing the many issues to make this program be a grand success. Thank you, sir, for your unfortunate support and confidence in us always. Last but not purely least, deep sense of appreciation and thanks to the participants who choose to be live with us and attend the webinar with a great enthusiasm and make it a successful event. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vijay Kumar, for your beautiful words of vote of thanks. And the webinar on National Education Policy 2020, hosted by IQAC of Nehru Arts and Science College, is here. Usman sir.
Oh, Murali sir,
program.